right, everybody. Welcome to Ben's Den, and we are in the Meet of Champions wrap-up show. It's hard to believe the New Hampshire wrestling season has come to an end, except for the New Englands, which I'll be meeting up with Mr. Schwartz tomorrow. We'll be doing a little pre-show on that. He is an encyclopedia for Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island, and so we'll fill in the blanks with Vermont and Maine, and we'll have a good show as we go into the Providence weekend here coming up. But before we do, we got a lot of good things that happened at the Meet of the Champions, and we're going to talk about some. Some things of note that I picked up. I learned that a Grand Mason is related to a laborer, and we had one putting in some serious work on the day. There was a man amongst boys, and he ends his Timberlane career on the top of the podium. Three-time D1 champ. He falls in the finals to Secret Squirrel. A Blackbird who was not to be denied. He finally climbs to the top of the podium. Chatty Cathy, he speaks volumes, asserts his dominance yet again. We had that nice Cavalier. He's got a three-time MOC champ. An unseeded wrestler. He storms through the bracket, has a typhoon of a match in the finals, and claims the championship and the OW. The return of the Mac, Benny Blanco, he exacts some revenge. A Lancer revenges his loss over the Bulldog. Mr. GQ earns his biggest smile yet. Junior leaves New Hampshire on top. The Sheriff gets his man. Nobody rides the Buck and Bronco. He only gives up 1 point en route to the top. And the heavyweight bracket was an absolute poo-poo show. And the horn was silent. And the crusade was in full effect against the Tide. And so we have plenty to talk about. We're going to go bracket by bracket. And we're going to start with the boys. We're going to cover the girls as well. And I brought in an amazing resource who's going to help me do both. And so please welcome in Bedford coach, Charles Lergio. Or excuse me, Charlie Kenna. He does Lergio and he helps on the high school level. And he has a girls state champion in the house. So Charlie, how are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Excellent. So first and foremost, let's cover that. What's it like having a state champ at home? Is she a diva now?
Yeah, it's about the same. Still not doing the trash, so.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's bounce into some really fun Meet of Champions talk. As I mentioned, it was a great day. I mean, as we talked about on the pre-show, from the beginning there was going to be matchups. So let's kind of start to dig through. So I had mentioned a Grand Mason. Well, he's the first to debut on the brackets here at 106 pounds, and that's Grand Mason out of Exeter. This boy is tough, Charlie, and I'm sure you like his style because he likes to throw those legs in and beat you up on top. But he walks through the quarters. That's a 7-0 win over De Leon. He goes into the semis, takes out Concord's Darcy. 9-3 is the score before a pin. Puts himself into the finals. You've got Matt Boucher on the bottom, Timberlane 2 seed. He does his job. He gets to the finals. He takes out Woodbury Akeen in the quarters and Bloxage of Salem in the semis. Sets up a great match in the finals, but it is all Grand Mason, 13-2 major decision. Now, let's keep in mind, this kid is a freshman, and he is at the top of the podium at the Meet of Champions. So, bright future ahead for him. Boucher's tough. He's going to get his licks in there as well. Overall, 106 pounds. Really good bracket. A lot of talent staying put, as is, kind of customary in the 106. It's usually your freshman and sophomore. What were your thoughts on the 106 and Grand Mason's big win?
I mean, I've seen Reed come up through the youth, so it wasn't really a surprise to see him tear through, but I'm a little surprised how consistent he's been throughout the whole year and even in this tournament. Just one after another, just solid wrestling, good technique. Not a lot of surprises in this bracket except for Biswas taking over Kyler Cox. I was surprised to see that happen, but at the same time, I guess not super shocked. He's been wrestling well all year too, so.
Yeah, I'd say that, probably the advantage there, again, Bloxage is a tough kid.
Yep.
Gets a lot of tough matches in being in the Salem program, right? Coach Eddie does a great job of getting those guys out of state. Absolutely. And seeing some tough kids. And so I think Cox is a young kid. He's also a freshman, and he's not going anywhere. He's going to keep building. And so Bloxage gets him in the quarters. He comes, down underneath, doesn't have much luck there. So Bloxage and Darji meet for third and fourth. It's Bloxage who continues on to the New Englands, and unfortunately for Darji, that ends his season there in Derry. And then Cox ends up in that fifth and sixth match. He
Yep.
exacts a little revenge there. He ends the day on a good note. He's got a 12-5 lead in the second period before pinning De Leon from Londonderry. So, overall, again, like I said, there's a lot of young talent here that is going to be returning next year. And we never know how the kids go, how it's going to grow, or how they're going to grow. One kid might gain 30 pounds, one kid might be in 106 again next year. So I think the exciting thing here is we had a freshman who wins it and a sophomore who comes in second. And so I think there's some definite good things on the horizon for us here.
I think a lot of these kids are here to stay too, which is kind of exciting because you'll probably see more matchups like this again next year. So
Correct. Yeah. All right. Man amongst boys, we go to 113 pounds, and that's Ben Mann from Timberlane. Buys into the quarterfinals. And then another tough Alvin Bronco, Timmy Malley. He's a freshman. He gets beat up. It's 11-0, and then he gets pinned. That pushes Man into the semifinals, and he takes on Ciano out of Wyndham. And tough match with Ciano, to be quite honest with you. A little tougher than I thought it was going to be. And I guess the reason there is Man has been so dominant, and you know, I mean, listen, Ciano's still young, right? And he gets a
freshman, yeah.
7-1 decision against an outgoing guy like Man. Color me impressed as the 4 seed. And so Man heads over to the finals. He awaits his opponent. On the bottom side of the bracket is, I mean, what a stellar year freshman Vic Loam has had out of Hollis Brookline. He climbs in as the 2 spot, quarterfinals match. He takes out one of your guys and Upham, and that's a pretty quick 54-second pin, brings him into the semifinals. And he's actually losing 9-5 in the second period against Sean Crean out of John Stark. And voila, he ends up on top and picks up the pinfall and keeps his hopes alive heading into the finals where he takes on Man. And unfortunately, it's a man against a boy here, right? This is the difference between a senior and a freshman. It is what it is. All things being equal, it's gonna have its impact. And so Ben Man goes out and just text falls the life out of this kid. 18-2 in the second period. That's nothing new for Loam because he goes out of state since he's been wrestling, getting hard matches, and he's not going to crumble. He was in the barn on Sunday, getting ready for the New Englands. And so what an amazing campaign. But a huge congratulations to Ben Man. He's just been on fire and untouchable this year. And he has been a real pillar of excellence for that Timberlane lower weight classes the last couple of years. And so he closes out his career as the Meet of Champions champ at 113. He heads down to New England, as does Vic Loam. Ciano bounces back from his semifinal loss, takes out Crean from Stark in the semifinals there. Listen, Crean's going to be hanging around for another year, but he got majored by Ciano, 16-5. So big win for Ciano. And then fifth and sixth, again, I mentioned Malley. Tough kid, Timmy Malley, comes back in the backside, takes on a really tough Maddox Boudreaux from Salem, down 3-0, no problem, comes up with the pin. So, ends his freshman campaign on a win in fifth place, Meet of Champions. Alvern's lower weights really coming into shape here. And so lots to talk about here. What did you like out of it?
The semis matches were the best for sure. That semis between Sean Crean and Victor Loam was probably one of the better matches to watch all day. I thought Sean Crean had it, and then Victor Loam just turns it on, man. What a great match.
Yeah, so Crean is really fun to watch, man, because he is explosive and he's a high flyer. He's not scared to let things go and really see, like, I'm gonna go for the big move. He's gonna be real good if he ever takes up some
Right.
freestyle or some Greco, because he'll go for it.
Oh man. And I mean, it ended up costing him in the semis, but so fun to watch.
Live by the sword, die by the sword, right?
Yep. And I mean, Ciano, I feel like has been, I want to say underrated all year. I'm telling you, I saw that kid. It's nice to see kids come up through the youth. He's one of those ones where I could tell you right away he's going to be great. And we got 3 more years of Ciano, so
Yep.
look
Yeah,
out.
well, I mean, Loam is a freshman, right?
Yep.
Seattle is a sophomore.
Yep.
And
Oh,
I think
Seattle's a freshman, isn't he?
I'll double check, but I thought I had him in track as a sophomore, but
I thought I
I've
remember
been known to
seeing him
be
last year.
wrong. Freshman, you are correct. Yep.
Yep.
So two freshmen for second and third. Crean, I believe, is a junior, as is Maddox Boudreaux of Salem. So that's four stud kids coming back. Man's going on to bigger things, but man, it's going to be good to watch those kids next year.
And you got Timmy coming back. Oh man, I'd love to see all these kids coming back because it's just so many more years of great wrestling we got ahead of us with.
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you what, if there was one thing I could wish from the wrestling gods, it would be to have a pre-peek into what the growth spurts will be like. Where will they be next year, right? Because some of these kids may never wrestle again. You know, you see a kid like Gabe Holt from Sauhegan. We'll talk about him later at 215. If he'd have told me 2 years ago he was going to be the Hulkamaniac he is, I'd be like, nah, oh, he's a beast. So
130.
anywho, let's hop to 120 because man was 120 something interesting, right? So Evan Lynch, three-time D1 state champ from Salem. He's at the top of the bracket. Secret Squirrel, Carter Kuhn out of Portsmouth, out of D2. He's your champ there. So they're on the top and the bottom sides of the bracket. And to be quite honest, and with all due respect to everybody else, I didn't foresee anybody else getting to the finals over these two. And so Lynch does his thing, quick pin in the quarters, tech fall in the semis over Billabram from Timberlane, parks himself into the finals. Kuhn, very much the same thing. He's been tech falling everybody all year, and he didn't stop. In the quarters, he took out Baker from Campbell, and he takes out Phipps his senior year from Plymouth. And so that puts Lynch and Kuhn in the finals. And when I said Kuhn's been teching people all year, he did not stop in the finals. I watched the video today before we got on here, and because I was reffing and I didn't get to be a fan this year, but man, he just looked laser focused and so sharp. Lynch did not have an answer for him, and you don't say this very much, but in the second period, Evan Lynch's tech fault for the loss, and he's your runner up, and that makes Secret Squirrel Carter Kuhn, a kid who last year missed the tournament because of his grades, shows up and comes out as your 120-pound all-state champ. So congratulations, Carter Kuhn. Amazing commitment, and just been real fun to watch the growth this year, both technically and, you know, as a human, maturity, right? These kids are going through puberty. There's ups, there's downs. And this year just dialed in. And so tough way for Lynch to end his career, you know, in New Hampshire. He'll move on to New England and try to make some noise down there. But it's definitely disappointing, I'm sure. And so, Charlie, your thoughts on this bracket?
I mean, I knew Carter Kuhn was good. I didn't know he was that good because I haven't had a chance to really see him throughout the year, but I was blown away at how good he was. I honestly thought Evan Lynch was just going to take it, but I was wrong, man. What a match. Carter Kuhn, I probably one of the best kids in the tournament, right? So
Yeah, I was
unbelievable.
talking with somebody earlier, and you'll probably be able to relate to this, but you know who he reminds me of is a young Peter Rinkin.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
when Peter Rinkin, because here's the thing, Carter Kuhn, he's a third-year wrestler this year. He didn't
Jeez.
wrestle as youth. He's a third-year wrestler, and Rinkin was very much the same. You know, Rinkin started out at MPAL, you know, went to Bedford, and now he's in Billerica. And that kid, since the moment he laced up wrestling shoes, has been chasing information and knowledge and practicing. And that kid's number one, looking for another New England title this year. And I would say that if you gave Carter Kuhn those 2 or 3 years in the youth level to get dialed in, and now he's in high school, he'd be looking very, you know, we may be seeing some competitions between those two guys, but just an amazing run this year. We got one more year with him. He's a junior this year, so he's going to be back in full force next year. We'll see what growth looks like, where he ends up. There's a part of me that hopes he puts on 15, 20 pounds and gets up into that, you know, real tough brackets that, you know, those 44s and those 50s where you get some real hammers. Because he's an absolute stud. And so, real fun to watch. I doubted him. You know, on the pre-show, I thought it was Evan Lynch's to lose, and
Me
you
too.
know, in fact, Carter Kuhn just took it. So,
Yeah.
huge congratulations. On the Conci side of the bracket, Billabram, disappointing loss in the semifinals for himself. He bounces back with a win over Barry from Exeter to get into the Concis against Robert Phipps. Again, Phipps is a senior. Unfortunately for him, his senior ended as Billabram took him out with a first period pin to continue on to New England's. And then Barry, he went underneath and finished his day with a win as he takes out Cam Roussel of Londonderry for a fifth place finish there. And, all things considered, we move now from team whoever you were with to now team New Hampshire. And at 120 pounds, I think that we're represented very well in Kuhn, Lynch, and Billabram. And I'm excited to see what happens down there in Rhode Island.
I hope to see Carter wrestle like he did last weekend, this weekend. So it'd be great.
Yeah, well, I spoke with Coach Whistler a little earlier this morning, and one of the things that he said is when Carter believes he can win, that's what he looks like. If he goes in with any doubt, it shows up. And I think that's true for a lot of kids. But the way that Coach Whistler was telling me about it today, he's confident that going down to New England's, if he wrestles with the focus and commitment he did on Saturday, that he's going to have a great day. And you and I both know that in New England's, everybody there is real good. After that first round, you're looking at state champs or runner-ups, and everything's the blood round in those kind of tournaments. So it's going to be good to see how our New Hampshire 120s do down there.
I'm excited, man. If
right.
anybody can do it, it's these two at the top.
Absolutely. I hope they don't see each other early. I hate when that happens.
Oh, good. That'd be the worst, right?
Yeah. All right. So let's go to 126. This one has a lot of talent leaving here. And so you got Buscema, who was the 1 seed. He's a senior from Salem. You got Old J from Timberlane, senior. You got Greg, he's a junior. And then you got Kaler, he's a junior. And so what a bracket, right? So you got Buscema, like I said, at the top, and you got Old J down there on the bottom. And both of them, they do their jobs. They make it down to the quarters real quick. Buscema takes out Jackson, hits the semis. And this is a bracket we got to talk about. We're going to take our time with this one because there were some good matches here. So that's on the top of the top side, right? So Greg also, he took out Jablonski from Stark in the quarters to set up a good semifinals between Buscema and Greg. Buscema, all business. 18-2 tech fall in the third period. He heads to the finals. Now here's where some things got interesting. So on the bottom side of the bracket, you got OJ, right? He's your 2. Kaler's your 3. And Trubiano is unseeded. Trubiano's from Keene. And so I'm sure he wasn't happy about that. But he goes in like he's done every time I've ever watched him. He straps up and he gets ready. And he jumps in and he wins his opening round. Ends up in the quarters against a very tough Frosty Jack Kaler from Sauhegan. And so Trubiano, he was on a mission on Saturday. And so he gets a 10-5 decision over Kaler, sends him to the Concis. Old J does his job, gets himself into the semis. And so Old J versus Trubiano. And this time it's Trubiano coming out on top, 7-4. And that puts him in the finals with what I would say probably a smile on the underneath side because Trubiano was at work on Saturday. And so Buscema and Trubiano, they meet again this week. And this time the Blackbird is not to be denied. 13-7 win over Buscema. He takes your 126-pound championship at the New Hampshire MOC. And when I say focused and committed and was not to be denied, he just wrestled it wasn't, I'm going to go tech everybody, I'm going to pin everybody. It was a grind, a blue-collar grind that puts Trubiano onto the top of the podium. Kaler bounces back. Tough Conci finals match. Kaler over Old J, sends him home. His career is done as a Timberlane wrestler here in New Hampshire. I'm sure he's probably looking at college. But Kaler continue on from Sauhegan. Greg bounces back for 5th over Noah Jackson from Spalding for 6th place. What an amazing bracket. That Kaler, Trubiano, wrestle that one 10 more times and tell me how it turns out. And same thing, Trubiano, Old J. What were your thoughts on 126?
wow on Tribbiano. He did an amazing job, had a great tournament. Kaler really impressed me. If he didn't end up with Tribbiano in the quarters, who knows how this tournament would have looked? Because Kaler looked good all day, and then in the third and fourth, like you said, beat up on OJ pretty good, which I didn't even think would happen. So he really surprised me on how tough he was this weekend. So
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Kaler and OJ, you got a pin. It was
yeah,
14-2, and I think the fall came, out of desperation, whatever, but just dominant. 40
right.
14-2, major decision if he doesn't pick up that pin. And so Kayla's a good kid. He's going to represent New Hampshire very well, as will Buscema and Trubbiano down there. Trubbiano, Buscema, last shot down there at the New Englands, and Kayla just going to keep getting familiar with it and keep trying to improve each time. OJ, Greg, and Jackson, I believe they're all seniors, and off they go into the next step of life.
But what a bracket, right? This is another one of those ones where if you wrestle it again, Buscema could end up on top. Tribbiano could come up on top again. Kaler could come up on top. This bracket was insane. I loved it.
Yeah, you roll that. That's the Doctor Strange, right? The multiverse. There's many different ways that one ends. However, if we move to 132, this one was going to end the way it was going to end, and
Yeah.
that was with Lance Bordalo, Chatty Cathy. So, Mr. Bordalo, this kid, just what a disappointing end to the season last year, right? Like, this young man has been putting in the work for the better part of a decade. He dealt with some real injuries in COVID, his freshman and sophomore year. Never was he deterred. In fact, he just put the pedal to the metal, traveled everywhere he could, hit every club he could, practiced with every team he could, competed wherever he could, and it just pays off. Comes out in the quarters, 38-second pin, goes to the semifinals, 6-0, 16-0 Tech, sits in the finals. He waits for O'Rourke, right? O'Rourke was the 2 seed. It was looking for him to get there. O'Rourke takes out Ploss in the quarterfinals, 19-4 Tech fall. Aljo makes it past Gowell in the quarters, which that's a big one. He was down 7-1 and comes back with the win in the second period to move on to the semis and take on O'Rourke. O'Rourke having none of it. 17-3 major decision out over Aljo. And like I said, wrestle this one 100 times and it's the same result. Bordalo 16-1 Tech fall over O'Rourke for redemption on last year's season and a chance to go down to New England this year, which I'm sure he's very excited about. And so the top two there, pretty much what I thought they would be. When you start to look at the consolation bracket, right? So Amon Gauthier, he beats Craig in the quarterfinals, sends him underneath. And so Consi, and also Ploss, again, stud from Newport, he got beat up by O'Rourke in the quarter, so he's got to go underneath. So two really talented kids heading down underneath. And then Ploss, major decision over Gowell, ends it. And then he beats Gauthier 22-13, redemption song. Craig on the other side of the Consies, he takes out Page out of the north side of Nashua, and then he takes out Aljo by a decision. Tough match in the Consi semis to even go for third place. Capitalizes on it. 19-4 Tech fall over Blake Ploss of Newport. So our 132-pound representatives for New England will be your champion Lance Bordalo from Pinkerton Academy, Caleb O'Rourke from Salem, and Andrew AJ Craig from Portsmouth. Season ends for Blake Ploss, James Aljo, and Amon Gauthier. And I got to tell you, those guys will be back. Ploss is a junior. Aljo is a sophomore. And we're going to, super talent, man. So, you and I, we both know Lance a long time. We've had the honor to coach him. Super coachable, right? Don't look to him for a long, deep conversation. But if you want to coach a kid who's committed to the sport, that's him. And so, great bracket. Tell me your thoughts.
Again, like you said, no surprise on Lance taking it. He's just been that good all year. And of our chances of placing in New England's, he's probably one of our best chances for New Hampshire. So O'Rourke did great as I expected him to. It just, you ran into a freight train in the finals. What can you do? Um, Craig impressed me. I was surprised to see him tear through. Was he even seeded? I haven't seen him all year, and he just had a close match in the Conti semis against Algio. I saw that one, but just tore apart Ploss in the third place bout, which, it's one of those things where it's like a clash of styles where sometimes your style is that much better. And that was for Craig. I think he got lucky if he hit Gauthier again, and who knows what would happen.
Yeah, styles make matchups, right? And
Right.
one thing about Craig is he's very aggressive and he's very strong. And plus, he's very slick and he's
Right.
very smooth. And sometimes strength beats that. And I think, AJ had enough technique. I think Plus is probably a little more technical, but I think AJ had enough technique to make the power be the real advantage there. And so
Yeah.
Plus is sticking around. I think he suffers from a weak room. He's the king of the Newport room. It happens in those small towns, but he gets out and he gets some work in. And so I'm excited to see how he bounces back for his senior season. And Aljo is a sophomore at Bishop Gurdon, and so he's going to be real fun to watch. And if Mr. Lance Bordelot doesn't go and hit some private school, he'll be real fun to watch next year. But I would understand if he took the leap.
I think Plus has Gray in the room with him. That's probably a pretty good matchup for him, I would think.
Definitely, and Gray's bigger.
Yeah.
But you remember even when we were at MPAL, it's when you got those 5 or 6 kids that are in that same
Oh,
weight class. That's when the Shark Tank's real.
yep.
So, all right, let's jump to 138, and we'll talk about kids that could be excellent representatives and have a good path down there in New England. Well, your champion at 138 pounds, Caden Brusso out of Hollis Brookline, he's gonna be one. He marched his way to the finals pretty easily. Got a bye in the round of 16, took a medical forfeit in the quarterfinals, and then he heads into the semifinals. Says, "I'm not trying to waste any energy here," and he takes out a young Ben Smiley of Soundhegan with a first period pin, and then so he sits in the finals waiting for his opponent. Presumably, the 2 seed Talon Walton is what we thought in the pre-show, and he holds the mud there. He comes out, beats Griffin out of Winnisquam. Tight match in the quarterfinals, tighter than I had anticipated. 5-3, Walton makes it out of the quarterfinal scare, jumps into the semifinals, and takes on Consalvo out of Timberlane. Consalvo's a junior, and he was not able to get it done against the senior Walton out of Salem. Loses 17-16, putting Brusso against Walton in the finals. And again, Brusso just not to be denied this year. Had a tough loss against Cam Arbogast last year in the finals in his quest for 4. He'll have to settle for 3. Boo-hoo, I guess. If I could get 3 MLCs, it's a happy day. But Brusso's a complete competitor, set the goals. Even when he didn't reach it, he kept the focus and just been an absolute standard at 138 pounds here in New Hampshire, both as a wrestler and as a team leader. And I'm sure he's going to move on and have a good college career. And at the very minimum, he's going to have some great experiences. That's what these kids got to keep in mind. And Walton, who's a senior, able to pull out the D1 championship last year, comes in as runner-up in the 138-pound bracket, is what it is. He's a very tough competitor, super athlete, if you ask me. And then when we jump down into the consolation matches, team points were getting into the mix here as well. And so Consalvo, he wipes his tears pretty quickly, goes down underneath, picks up 2 wins, including a tech fall 15-0 over Ben Smiley of Soundhegan in the 3rd place match. Keeps his season alive. He's heading down to New England's along with Walton and Brusso. Smiley, Stamp, and Spencer, they're all heading home for the season. But here's the good news. So Frosh, Stamp, sophomore, Smiley and Spencer, junior, Consalvo. So aside from Brusso and Walton, 4 of your 6 placers here at MOC in 138 pounds will be back next year. Hopefully, Ian Spencer was okay. Again, he medical forfeited a whole bunch, but these are the breaks. But Charlie, we've had a chance to watch Brusso for a long time now, and he just has never, his coach put it the right way. I've never seen the kid in any kind of burnout. Just loves the sport.
One of my favorites to watch too. So it's nice to see it happen for him. I'm so glad. he had no problem. He didn't need anybody's help getting to the finals, but it's great to see him there because he's had a great career, and I'm going to be sad to see him go. To be honest with you, he's one of my favorites to watch.
It's those nice kids. We love them.
Yep.
When you're a good,
But I
tough
mean,
wrestler and a good human, we like that.
yeah, like you said, the down at the bottom, Smiley, Spencer, Stamp, all those kids are great to watch. Ian, one of my favorites to watch. He's just a tough, physical wrestler. I think he's going to be great going forward, and I'm sure we're going to see Ben, Ian, and Dominic on the top pretty soon, up with Consalvo. Who's going to stop him next year, right?
Right. Yeah, and here's the thing, like Smiley he's a gorilla, man.
I love it, right? That's the kind of wrestling I like.
Think about another year of just growth and maturity, what that kid's gonna be like. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. And I'll tell you, what a cool scene when Ian Spencer's wrestling and his brother's in the corner. I mean, again, nobody in my family wrestled, but just imagine having your brother in the corner. It just must be amazing. So, a real good bracket there at 138 with a lot of returning talent. And so, when we move on to 144 pounds, we see a lot of the same here in that there's a lot of talent going to be sticking around. One of them that's not was the one seed, Jaden Deal. So he had his day. He buys into the quarters, picks up a 16-4 lead before a first period pin over freshman Stephen Whistler of Portsmouth. He sends him back into the consies in his freshman quest for a first MOC title. Deal moves on. He takes on Darby out of Exeter, picks up a 12-3 major decision to reach the finals. On the bottom side of the bracket, you had Dominic Lee from Timberlane. He reaches the quarterfinals on a bye, takes on one of the mayors of Cradle City, Jackson Carter out of Concord. Wasn't to be for Carter this year. He goes down to the consies after Lee pins him in the second period. Now, I'm going to stay in the quarters here for a minute because how people got to the semis. So we know Lee is in the semis from Timberlane on the bottom side of the bracket. Deal's already in the finals on the top. Now, the path to the semis for the other opponent started unseeded, and that's Leo Runes out of Keene. He's on the bottom side of the bracket. He takes Herbert out of Milford. He techs him 17-1 at the end of the third period. Heads into the quarters. You mentioned Gray from Newport. Tough kid. Well, Runes was having none of it. Takedown pin, 50 seconds. Now you got Runes, the unseeded, against Lee, the 2 seed in the semifinals. It's a 4-4 match in the second period, and Runes pulls off the pin, moves himself into the finals to take on senior Jaden Deal. And just note this, Charlie. Runes is a sophomore. And so Runes steps in there. And I mentioned there was a typhoon of a match, and it sure was. It was Runes over Deal 12-11 in the finals of the 144 pounds. And unseeded Leo Runes of Keene is your 144-pound champ. Jaden Deal from Spalding is your runner-up. Now I mentioned Whistler. He got bounced in the consies in the championship round against Deal. And so he goes underneath and gets to work. He takes 1, 2, 3, including over 2 seed Dom Lee in the consi semis. Ends up in a tight match against the mayor again, Jackson Carter, who also battled his way to third place. Got put in the cradle, got taken out of the cradle. Smart move. Coach Whistler says, have 2 hands on one of his. Smart advice. Ends up, Stephen Whistler, the freshman, is going to take his talent down to Rhode Island, as he's going to be the third place representative from New Hampshire with an 11-8 win over Carter. He'll join Jaden Deal and Leo Runes. And man, oh man, when you talk about a great class, we have a sophomore, a freshman, and 2 juniors in this bracket that are coming back. Coach Kenna, what do you see?
Wow, for Leo Runes. You got to be kidding me. I mean, he ran into Lee at D1s and dropped a match. What did he end up with, third there? But, I think that's just a style clash for him. But he had such a good tournament. It was one of those, it was great to watch. But this whole class is really close, and even the kids that don't place, if you look at some of the other kids that are down below, like you've got kids that aren't even placing that are like 4-7 matches, 5-6 matches, and those kids are also sophomores or freshmen. So this is a deep, deep class, which is great. But I mean, the finals match was probably the most fun to watch out of all of them. It was like
Oh, for
11-2
sure.
or 11-12, just points back and forth. Great match.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and for his troubles, Mr. Runes earned the outstanding wrestler of the tournament. Well deserved. And when we talk about OWs, as we move to 150 pounds, your one seed was the Division One outstanding wrestler, and that was Carter Mayotte of Pinkerton. He was at the top of the bracket. Last week's victim for Mayotte was Benny Blanco, Benjamin Byrne from Nashua South. He's your two seed on the bottom side of the bracket. You had Foster from BG, was third. And unfortunately for anybody on the bottom side of the bracket, Benny Blanco was not having it. He comes out with a 41-second pin in the round of 16, follows that up with a first period pin over Gravelisa Spalding, gets himself into the semis, has a second period pin over Colton Seuss of Timberlane to reach the finals. Meanwhile, Mayotte on the top side of the bracket, he's looking to ride the wave of being last week's 6th seed to champion. He comes in on top, as I said, picks up a 10-5 win over Young from Winnicott in the quarters, takes on Holden out of Londonderry, picks up a 10-1 major, and we have a rematch of the Division One championship at the Meet of Champions. Great match again, but Benjamin Byrne was on top this time. He picks up a 9-6 decision over Mayotte for the 150-pound championship win at the All-States. Colton Seuss, he drops underneath. He takes on Caleb Holden out of Londonderry, and it is Seuss on top with a pin in the second period. That extends his season by 1 week, sends him to New England's along with Mayotte and Byrne. And again, in this particular class, you got a bunch of talent sticking around. Byrne, Mayotte, Seuss, and Knuckles. Knuckles is not, he was his 6th place finisher. Tells you how deep this bracket was. Those kids are all juniors. And Holden, who's a 4th place finisher here out of Londonderry, is a sophomore. 150-pound bracket. Top 2 are pretty clear in both weeks. But man, these kids are talented. What are we going to do with them all next year?
I mean, Mayotte and Byrne, what so close to each other in terms of skill and ability, but they both look so good. So it's only going to get better, Ben. It's only going to get better.
Did
I'm
you get a
excited.
chance to see the finals between them?
I did. It was, it was close technical match, and it could have gone either way, and it just happened to go Burns' way at that time. But like you said, last week it was Mayotte on top. So I
Well, here's
I
the
love
thing
watching those two
too.
wrestle.
If you look at the box score, it's 3-2 at the end of first, right?
Yep.
Then it goes 5-4 at the end of period 2, and then it's 8-4, going like a minute into the period. Then Byrne gives up a stall. It's 8-5. Then Mayotte gives up an unsportsmanlike conduct, and I don't know what happened, but he gives it up, and then just a little escape there. So I don't want to say closer than it looked on the board, but yeah, it still seems that
Close
Byrne
match.
has the edge here. And after losing last week, I don't know if he was going to be denied this week.
I don't think so. It was. I mean, it was closer than the score said, but I think he would probably roll it again. Who knows? But
I'd roll it 10 more times and watch it.
sounds like a good match to me. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Talk about a matchup that I would watch 10 times. One of your own at home, Tucker Watson. He's your one seed in the 157-pound division. Him and Manny Perez, they set themselves on for another collision course with Perez on the bottom, and they did exactly that. Watson, he marches to the finals. Pin in the quarters, a pin in the semis. I mean, he's putting up 30-plus points before he's pinning people. And just, very great. I mean, just a great season for Watson all along. Perez, I mentioned on the pre-show, he missed some time this year with a hand injury. he comes out and he does his work, right? He picks up a tech fall in the quarters, a tech fall in the semis, and we got a 1 and 2 going on in the finals here. And so what a finish that we have in this match, right? So very evenly matched, right? So after the first period, there's nothing. After the second period, 1-0 Perez with an escape. After the third period, 1-1 after a Watson escape. We go into sudden victory. And again, these kids, they wrestle them 10 times. I'm going to watch it 20 times because I'm going to watch each iteration twice because it's going to be that entertaining. And this one did not disappoint. It's sudden victory, 7 seconds left before we go to ultimate ride out time. And Perez chucks Watson with a lat drop and earns the fall. I think at that point, the whole gym was just going absolutely nuts. Perez is looking in the corner just at his coaches, gets a little smile on his face. And in the course of 1 week, the highs and the lows that these human beings can experience are just absolutely amazing. And on this day, it's Perez coming out on top. He's your champ at 157 pounds. Watson is in your runner-up position. And Critchfield, Jacob Critchfield out of Hull's Brookline, who's so tough, and he's just a junior. He loses to Perez in the in the championship round. He heads underneath, hits the Conci semis, takes out Fisher from Kingswood with a 4-0 decision. And then Gillard, who also loses up in the championship down, he comes into the Conci semis, takes out Chung from Concord. Gillard and Critchfield in the third place match. Gillard, I keep doing it. Sorry, Coach Gillard. It's Gillard. Gillard is up 3-0 in the third place match in the second period. Critchfield makes the move and he pins him. He puts Critchfield in third place, heading to the New Englands, extends his season one more. Gillard, Chung, and Fisher, they all head home at the end of the day for the season. And I tell you, Charlie, at 157 pounds, you got your two seniors, right? Your champ and your runner-up. But underneath that, Critch, Gillard, Chung, and Fisher, they are all underclassmen. And 57 gives New Hampshire hope next year. What do you think?
I don't know that I want to talk about this because this one stings for me. Tucker's such a great kid. He's been tough all year. Obviously the finals didn't go the way I wanted, but that was probably the cleanest lat drop I've ever seen in my life. What a finish, right? Still stings though.
It still stings, yeah. I can understand. But when you look at it like this, like that's what we were saying, right? You wrestle them guys 10 times. What is it, 5 and 5? And all 10 are going to be exciting matches. And so this is the sport that we play, and it's what builds amazing human beings. So
Tucker
will have his
1-1 match,
revenge.
right? You see a match
Yes.
that's 1-1 and you think that match must have been boring. That's not what this was.
Nope.
Everybody, both Tucker and Manny were just going at each other the whole time. Just nobody was getting anything. It was great. Good.
Yeah, good scrambles, right? It's not just hanging in tie-ups. I mean, these kids are going after it.
Right.
So
Fantastic.
Speaking of going after it, go to 165 pounds. Well, Mr. GQ, Shane Mackey out of Alvord, he's your 1 seed. And he earned his biggest smile on the day. He smashes his way through this entire bracket, right? Quarterfinals, pin, semifinals, major, finals. Meets Jason O'Brien out of Timberlane. O'Brien didn't have a bad day, right? Just one bad match. He got a bye into the quarters. He picks up a major in there, gets a tech fall in the semis over a very tough Landon McKiernan out of Pinkerton. But it just was GQ's day, man. All smiles. Shane Mackey is your champ. He picks up a 57-second pin in the championship round. And so he's your 165-pound champion representative for New England this week. O'Brien comes in at second. El Mac bounces back in the Concies with a win over a very tough and unfortunately senior Connor Whitman out of Nashua South. Avery Niemi from Exeter and Noah Womack. Niemi's a sophomore, so he's not done, but he's done for the season. And Womack, he's a senior, so that's a wrap for him. But I got a good deal of exposure to Mackey this year. Got to see some Alvern wrestling at tournaments, and just it seems like each week he just kept getting better and better. And really, what I saw from him was some confidence building. And Mr. GQ, man, congratulations! What a way to wrap up your New Hampshire wrestling career before heading off to New England's and then eventually the next steps. But um, Coach Kenna, some good stuff in here.
Yeah, no one was going to stop him today. Mackey, just unbelievable all day, right? I don't think, what did he, the closest match he had was in I think the consies, right? Or the
In
semis.
semis, yep,
Yeah.
16-2.
And it was still a blowout. So what a day for him. Just looked great all day. O'Brien was tough, man. You just, you run into a freight train, you're going to have to get out of the way, I think. But
Yeah,
Mackey
I'll
was
tell
just
you, I
that
thought
good.
this one happened a little quicker than, I thought it would be a little tougher. I still thought Mackey was going to get him. But O'Brien, I thought he was going to maybe put up a little more resistance, but, no shame on him. Mackey just came in a man on a mission. That was,
Right. No stopping him that day.
that's it. And another man on a mission, David Pinto Jr. out of Londonderry. He, no suspense. He's your 175-pound meter champions champion. And guess what? Um, Pin, tech fall, fall. All right. So that's the top side of the bracket. But let's talk about the bottom side because that's where some of the magic was going to happen here. Pinto is just he's a level above the rest of the 175-pound weight class here in New Hampshire. Hopefully that stays the course at New England's for him. But on the bottom side of the bracket, you had two amazing wrestlers down there, and that's Sawyer Goodwin out of Rochester. Excuse me, Spalding, City Rochester. And then Logan Allaire out of Campbell. So the 2 and 3 seed, they did what they're going to do. They smashed everybody on their way to the semifinals, where quite an interesting matchup. I got to tell you, the I haven't had a chance to watch the video on this one, but I do look forward to it. Um, Allaire and Goodwin they clashed last week, and it was Goodwin coming out on top. And I think Goodwin's had the last couple of matches, and um, I tell you, Allaire didn't take kindly to that because he got after it in the semifinals against Goodwin. He gets a 13-2 lead over Goodwin, which nobody but Pento has been able to do that to Goodwin this year. So he builds up a 13-2 lead and he gets a pin in the second period. And that sends Goodwin down to the consies and it lines up the Pento match for Logan. And it just wasn't meant to be for Allaire. Again, it's no knock on him, but just David Pinto Jr. was just not going to be denied. He picks up a 5-0 lead heading into the second period and ends up putting a pin on Allaire. What I loved about it, and I got a great picture of it, was those two young men, showing respect, big hug at the end. Pinto takes his anklets, throws them up, pew, pew, pew. That's how he closes out his career. Big congratulations. He's been a tremendous role model to New Hampshire wrestling. And, no doubt that's where he was going. I wish him a ton of luck next week at the New Englands. And, good to see, Allaire finishing up in the runner-up position. Him and Sawyer, whoever goes there, I'm happy for him. But I knew those were going to be your top three. I wasn't sure who 2 and 3 was. Forgy from Kingswood, another senior, just one of those kids who comes from a new program. He picks up fourth after losing to Sawyer in the consies, but just a tremendous leader for the Kingswood team. I think he's leaving them in better shape than when he got there, and that's about all you can ask for from a kid who's trying to help you build a program. And those top three that are heading down to New England, they're just what a cup. All three of them, just a bunch of maniacs. And so Pento's probably the most sane out of all of them on the mat. He's the most technical, most polished. And Allaire and Goodwin, they just open the cage door and let them out. And so fun stuff to watch on Saturday. What do you think?
I mean, Pinto's just so good. It's hard to even talk about it. He did exactly what you'd expect from him. He just walked right through. But Logan Allaire had a hell of a day. He looked great from start to finish. And unfortunately ran over one of my kids. But he just looked fantastic all day. So That's the best I've seen him wrestle all year.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, the 175 weight class, all seniors. That's a big hit there.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a big talent dump there. And so when we talk about some of these lighter kids, keep going through that puberty cycle, that 175 is going to need to be repopulated a little bit.
Well, we got some good talent in the bottom. They didn't, none of them plays, but they'll get there next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you get these maniacs out of here, it makes room for them to place, right?
I wouldn't want to wrestle those two maniacs in the finals.
No, I liked wrestling Sawyer Goodwin when he was just wanting to throw headlocks all the time and he weighed 90 pounds. That was way more fun. All right, let's kick it up. We're heading up to the big boys, right? So 190 pounds. This week had Nichols on the top of the bracket as your 1 seed out of Pelham. On the bottom side, you had Lindblad from Timberlane, your 2 seed, and 3 was Tetralt out of Alvern, and unseeded was Mr. Emmett Nossman out of Plymouth. The sheriff, him and Nichols met last week in the D3 finals, and it was Nichols coming out with a win. So regardless of where the sheriff was placed, he was hunting for the man that he wanted to take out by the law. And so that's what he did. Nichols had a heck of a time up there on the top. Pin in the quarters over St. Ange out of Exeter pretty quickly. Takes on Xander Wood out of Salem. Wood's a little bit younger. He's an underclassman. He gets a 16-9 decision loss from Nichols, places Nichols into the finals. Bottom side of the bracket, whole bunch of good stuff, right? Chase Flagg, Tetrol, they're going at it in the round of 16. It's Flagg. He takes out Tetrol via pin in the first period with 3 seconds left. That pushes him to the quarters. Nossaman, he takes on Greenwald out of Kingswood. Quick pin puts him down in the quarters against the number 2 seed, Lindblad out of Plymouth. No problem for the sheriff. Quick 50-second pin in the quarters. That sets up Flagg and Nossaman in the semis. And again, Nossaman, a man on the mission, trying to capture the fugitive that is Nichols, who beat him last week. Nossaman takes out Flagg 7-0 in the semis with a pin in the first period. And then we get Nichols and Nossaman in the finals. And this week, it's the sheriff getting his man 11-5 lead before a pinfall with 10 seconds left in the match. Emma Nossaman, your 190-pound champ from Plymouth. Kid is talented. He's been working hard. Nichols just, again, I've watched these guys wrestle 10 times. And just who do you bet on? Nossaman has the edge, but then Nichols gets the edge. It's just what a couple of crazies. Flagg suffers the loss against Nossaman in semifinals, goes down, takes out the 2 seed in Lindblad from Timberlane, and Chase Flagg, he sends Bo to the New Englands with a third place finish in the 190-pound division. And so when you look at the 3 we're sending down in 190, you got Nossaman, Nichols, and Flagg. New Hampshire's going to be represented very well down there. Like I said, Wood is a younger guy. Tetrol, I think he's a junior this year. I think, just not the best day for him. Running into some tough competition, came out on the wrong side of it. But man, 190 was an absolute, again, on the bottom side of the bracket, just typhoon of talent.
Well, we were even missing one. Cowett got COVID, unfortunately, and wasn't able to wrestle today or the other day. So it would be even deeper.
Yep. And Cowett, senior this year?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Ugh, that's a tough way to end it.
Yep.
Tough way. Did you get a
Man,
chance to see
Chase
that
Flagg,
Nichols
what a
Nossaman?
day, right? Well, nope.
So the finals match, I watched a little bit before we got on here, and it's been a couple of times this year that Nichols has gotten Nossaman in a cradle. And so
Yep.
I was watching it, and Nichols gets in on the single, and Nossaman, he's defending it. He starts to bring his head down, and you could just hear Austin in the background. Keep your head up! Like, it's those kind of, intelligent decisions that you make in a split second that has kept Nichols in a lot of these tight matches. And, to see Nossaman stay in control and get the win in the senior year, it's a big win for him. I know he's got visions of grandeur heading down to New England. And so, again, I think New Hampshire is going to be represented very well in the 190-pound division.
What a day for Chase Flagg, though, man. I was impressed. He came back He dropped one. Then in the consies, he just kind of tore through. I did not think Chase Flagg was going to beat Lindblad so bad. He, you know, it's a, you know, he had a great day. He just Nossman and Nichols are just that good.
Yeah, well, Flag actually he took out Tetrol in the semis.
No,
Uh,
in the third place bout.
oh, excuse me, the third place bout. Yep. And when you talk about like Lindblad, right? Tough kid,
Yep.
and Flag to put up 13 on him. That's pretty impressive. And I looked in track, Charlie. Track is the Bible of our New Hampshire wrestling statistics, and it's missing a few pages. They didn't have Flag's year on there, but I want to say he's a junior this year because I think Bo only had the one senior, but don't quote me on that.
Oh,
All right,
I
let's
hope
talk
he does that.
215 because 215, this one, Boudreaux from Alvern, he's your one seed on the top of the bracket. He's just been having an amazing season. He got upset at the Capital Classic, quick pin. And ever since then, that boy's been on a mission. So him and Caruso from Pinkerton, they were on a collision course heading towards the finals. You had Dakota from John Stark in there. You had Jackson Hall from Bo was your 3 seed in there on the bottom side. Gabe Holt from 215 up on the top side trying to run into Boudreaux. Our boy McConnell from Bedford, he was up on the top side. Husarian from Plymouth. I mean, the 190, or excuse me, the 215 bracket, just jam packed top and bottom, right? So Boudreaux comes out. He's on the top side. He opens with a bye and then goes into the quarters against McCoubry, picks up an 18-1 tech fall. Holt and McConnell, they do what they got to do. Both pick up big wins in the round of 16, set up a clash in the quarterfinals. Tough match here. McConnell coming out on top, sends Holt down into the consies, gives McConnell the chance to meet Boudreaux into the semis. And it's Boudreaux here, 10-0 major decision. And I think the wins here are this. McConnell didn't get pinned, which happens to most of Boudreaux's opponents. And I think here you see the difference that 2 years can make. Boudreaux is a senior, McConnell is a sophomore. And so I really believe, it's not an impossible hill to climb. But when you start to say all things being equal from a technique point of view, because both of those young men have really good technique, when all things are equal like that, I think that there's that age difference. It does matter. It's 2 more years of muscle growth and tendon growth and all bone growth and all that. And so McConnell, he heads down to the semifinals. That sends Boudreaux over into the finals. Now on the bottom side of the bracket, mayhem again, right? You got Caruso, he's got to get a quick pin in against Hebert out of Goffstown to get into the quarters. Dakota, the blue man from John Stark, right? He's just going to bring his lunchbox and get to work. Well, he brings his lunchbox, and unfortunately, Caruso hits him over the head with it. He pins him in the second period, sends Dakota down underneath. On the top side of the bottom side of the bracket, you got Jackson Hall. He meets Puckett in the quarterfinals. Puckett's from Concord. He says, I'm not ready to be done just yet. He beats Hall in the quarters. That sets up a great match in the semifinals, right? You got Puckett and Caruso. Caruso, not to be denied, picks up a 10-0 lead. He pins Puckett close to 30 seconds left in the third period. Sets up the 1-2 matchup in the finals. Boudreaux versus Caruso. And what's Caruso do? Not much. It's all Boudreaux. 9-0 major decision. Sean Boudreaux out of Alvern's your 215-pound champ. Stud of a kid, sweetheart of a kid, helps out all the young kids. You see him talking to other teams, kids helping them out. Just a great ambassador for the sport. Same thing for Caruso. Absolute stud of an athlete. He's going on to college to play football. And then Jackson Hall out of Bow stays the course. He gets upset earlier in the tournament there, has to go underneath. He comes back, faces Gabe Holt, who also, lost in the quarters, had to make his way through it. Both of them do their jobs. Hall takes out McConnell in the semis. I know that's sadness for you. Holt on the bottom side of the bracket. He takes out Puckett from Concord. 11-1 lead before pinning him. So Baby Hulk, aka Holt, because he didn't like the awkward kid nickname, so I'll call him some Baby Hulk. He takes on Jackson Hall out of Bow, and it's Hall. He takes the 4-0 decision to keep the 3 seed and the third place finish. Your reps from New England or from New Hampshire at 215 are Boudreaux, Caruso, and Hall. Some great talent there. The top three, they're all seniors. Holt, Puckett, and McConnell, all underclassmen. Puckett's a junior, the other two are sophomores. So 215 weight class, depending on growth spurts and shaping, and how things go, looking very promising. And so congratulations to those three young men that are going to New England. But Charlie, what a bracket. And I know you paid attention because McConnell's in it. So,
Oh yeah.
woo!
Unfortunately, Gavin got hurt in the semis in his ankle, so that's why he had to kind of drop a couple matches towards the end. Gabe Holt is one of my favorite kids to watch because I remember him when he was like 130 pounds, I feel like last year. So I think that's going to be, if he keeps getting strong, man, that kid, he's just such a good kid, good wrestler. And I think 215 looks good on him. So I'm excited to see him in the future.
Absolutely. All right. Now, in what is probably the craziest bracket of the day, we go to heavyweight. And I don't even know where to start. This is nuts. All right. So let's start with where everybody started, right? So Evan Ray, your 1 seed, right? He was your D1 champ last week, top of the podium, the horn. It was being sounded in the gym. Your 2 seed, another Caruso. This time it is James Caruso. He's a junior. He's going to be around for another year. Watch out, heavyweights. So he's your 2nd seed down on the bottom, right? Your 3 seed, B squared, Bishop Kearns from Bishop Gurdon. He's down there at the top side of the bottom bracket. You also got Sakakinis on the bottom. You got Mullen out of Bow, and you got Chesser out of Spalding. Top side of the bracket in company with Ray. You got Ben out of Bedford. You had Lawrence out of Kingswood, who's had a heck of a year. And then Jaden Coulon out of Manchester Memorial. He's been just trying to fight the demon that is Evan Ray for him. He hadn't had a win against him yet. You had Zanoni from Pelham, unseeded, but just, crazy. And then Zoik from Winnisquam. That's in the round of 16, Mr. Kenna. So, excuse me. Let's check some paths. So how do we get to the quarters? Well, Ray, he goes in with a bye, meets Matt Ben, who took out Finnegan of Goffstown. That sets up that quarter match. Coulon beats Lawrence out of Kingswood, pushes him to the quarters. Zanoni upsets Soik, if you want to call it an upset. Just because you don't have a number next to your name sometimes. But Zanoni from Pelham, he meets Coulon in the quarters. So the top side of the bracket has Ray versus Ben, Coulon versus Zanoni. Well, Ray he puts it on Ben, right? His first period pin, sophomore, senior, a lot more experience on the mat. It's the way it's supposed to go. Coulon, on the other hand, he goes down to Zanoni, builds up a 7-3 lead, puts the pin on him in the in the third period. Now we got a Ray Coulon semifinals match. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go for a second with a breath. Whew. So I mentioned Coulon never had a win against Ray coming into this match. And, it's not that he's going to be done this year because Coulon is only a junior. He's got another year. But when you're at the meet of champions, it's now or never. It doesn't matter whether you're a freshman or a senior. In your mind as a competitor, it's now or nothing, or now or never. So Coulon stepped on the mat against Evan Ray, and they had a battle. And this time, Jaden Coulon from Memorial, he cracks the code, and he's able to beat Evan Ray in the semifinals of the Meet of Champions at the 285-pound division. And I'm talking about it like he won it. But this is just to get to the finals. But that's how much respect I have for Evan Ray as a competitor. He's been around this sport for a long time. He's been a powerhouse the entire time he's been here. Just keeps getting better and better and focused. And for Coulon to take him out in the semis is a crushing loss for Ray, I'm sure. But in true fashion, he'll head underneath, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So Coulon, he makes his way to the finals off a career first in beating Evan Ray. On the bottom side of the bracket, let's get back to where we were. So we got the quarterfinal set up here, right? Kearns and Sakakini. They're supposed to make their way to the quarters. They both do. It's Sakakini coming out with a first period pin over Kearns. Kearns was your 3 seed. Sakakini says, I don't care. I'm going to the semifinals. Now underneath, Chesser, he wins his opening match to put himself in the quarters against Caruso. Well, Caruso's a big, strong kid, right? He's up on the match 3-2 in the second period. Chesser didn't get the memo, apparently. He decides to pin Caruso to reach the semifinals against Sakakini, sending the 2 seed underneath. Just this is why we wrestle them, right? So we're in the semifinals. Sakakini have conquered against Chesser from Spalding. It's Sakakini's day in the semifinals. He gets a quick first period pin over Chesser, sends him to the consies, and sets up a monster match in the finals. And in that match, you have Jaden Coulon from Manchester Memorial, Wayne Sakakini out of Concord. And what a match. Back and forth, not points wise, but just these are not your father's heavyweights. They're not just big roly-poly kids that can't barely move, that tie up for 6 minutes. These kids get after it. There are shots. There are scrambles. There are all the good things you love as a wrestling fan. And these 2 young men did not disappoint. It's Coulon who completes the crusade, and he takes out Sakakini with a 4-2 lead before pinning him into 3 seconds, it looks like, or a minute and 3 seconds into the third period. The place went nuts. The Memorial fans went nuts. The Memorial coaches went nuts. And your 285-pound champion, Jaden Coulon, he went nuts. Big smile. Sakakini gets up, always a class act, shakes his hand. And just what an amazing journey for Coulon with the win over Ray in the semis and to complete it over Sakakini in the finals. Not only does he extend his season, he extends it as the champ. Now, take a breath because that's just the championship round. Go underneath into the consies, right? So if you look just in the consi 8, number 2, right? The names in there. Caruso, your 2 seed. Kearns, your 3 seed. Zanoni, who could be seeded. All 3 of those guys in your consi of 2, on consi 8, round 2. And so Caruso is able to make it through. Kearns is not. He loses to Lawrence, sets up Caruso in the consi. Caruso continues to push through. He gets to the consi semis. Chesser, he bounces down right after a semifinal loss. He takes on Ben out of Bedford. He sends Ben packing with a 17-6. And Ray and Caruso are the consi semis. Your 1 and 2 are in the consi semis. You don't see that all the time, but here it is. And underneath, it is the number 2 seed, keeping the horn silent. No. Caruso, 12-2 major decision over Ray in the consi semis. Sets up Caruso and Chesser in the 3rd place match. There's a part of me that wonders if that semis loss for Ray was just too much to overcome mentally. I wouldn't have bet that Ray would not have made it to the New Englands this week. That just shows you the depth of this bracket. And so we go to our 3rd place match. You got your 2 seed trying to redeem himself against an unseeded Wesley Chesser out of Spalding. And it is just not to be. It is Wesley Chesser with a late takedown in the match that hasn't happened. He gets an escape at the start of the 3rd. He gets a takedown, and he picks up some near fall to pick up an 8-6 decision over James Caruso from Pinkerton. And your 285-pound reps here are Jaden Coulon out of Manchester Memorial. Congratulations for Memorial returning in championship form. Wayne Sakakini out of Concord. And a surprise to some, but not to those hardcore fans that have watched Mr. Chesser wrestle. Wesley Chesser out of Spalding is your 3rd place at 285 and rounds out the representatives for the New England Championship at Providence, Rhode Island this weekend. Evan Ray, James Caruso, and Matt Ben, that's your season. And Ray, that's your New Hampshire high school wrestling career. Coach Kenna, this one was bonkers.
What happened? I mean, no disrespect to Leo Runez, but how the heck did Big J not get OW, man? Because that was electric. Anybody who saw that match, that was unbelievable. Even in the semis, and it was the whole time, man. And I think two seeded wrestlers end up fourth and fifth, and everybody else is unseeded. This is like something you would see at 106 normally. Wow.
Yeah. Um, you know, again, like you said, no disrespect to Runes. What an amazing run he had, right?
Right.
There's a good argument, a real strong one for Kulan to have maybe a co-award or yeah, I'd chop that plaque in half and give them each half because just two amazing runs and Jaden's been grinding hard to reach this mountaintop. I think if he'd have just beat Ray in the semis and he'd have lost in the finals, he'd still thought it was a miracle day. But to finish it on the top of the podium and just complete the Cinderella story, just it's what this sport's built on, man.
Well, and it's not like Ray was wrestling bad all day. He was wrestling great. It's just everybody else was wrestling great too.
Yep,
Wow.
agreed. Yeah, Ray didn't have an off day.
No.
Everybody else had a Ray-like day. That's what it is. Well, that's all 14 boys brackets. So we move to the team points here, and it's shall we say a return to the top, and that is for one Timberlane squad. And so Timberlane just had another great week on the mat. D1 champs last week just wrestled out of their mind, and this week, probably not the most excited that they've been with the results individually. They had one champ, two runner-ups, three thirds, two fourths, and a fifth. They send a whole bunch down to New England's, and they have 180 points. They beat runner-up Salem, who had four runner-ups and one third, a fifth, and a sixth, with 137 points. The Blue Devils out of Salem. Pinkerton Academy, a very respectable third place with 117 points. Their lone champ and Lance Bordelot and a couple of runner-ups, as well as a third and a fourth. Keene was fourth, Concord fifth. That's your top five. Parity shows up in the what they call it the co-ed division, but I'll call it the boys division. Um, it's what I want to see, man. I want to see some really quality tournaments, some quality wrestling, some upsets. Coach Brown and his staff have done an amazing job, rebuilding in the new landscape that is New Hampshire wrestling post COVID and all that. Um, you know, Love to see the camaraderie on all the teams. Timberlane, they run deep. There's a brotherhood there, like in Concord and in Salem, that's developing. And so, overall, some powerhouse teams. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing?
I mean, just the depth in Timberlane. I think where they have like two people not placed out of their whole thing, and their lineup, would they send 9, 10 just MOCs? That's impressive. Salem, I mean, they got caught against a bunch of freight trains over and over again. But any one of those kids who ended up in second, you put them in another bracket, they probably could have won. So,
Well, I'm sure
amazing.
I'm sure Eddie was looking for I'm sure he wasn't planning on Lynch not being a champ, right?
No, right?
Um,
Wild.
Buscema, he's hoping he can pick up the championship points. Same thing with Walton. You know, that's the thing. A couple of matches here or there, and this is a different ball game for any team, and that's what makes it interesting as a fan, right? Timberlane had dominance for for a decade or two, and it just didn't make any excitement for the MOC or any of that. It was just individual, and having the parity here, I just love it.
Yeah, just so close. Three down, three to what, like seven is really what, 20 points apart?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good tournament.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Speaking of good tournaments, let's transition because we have a whole nother tournament that we have to talk about, right? And so we start in our girls state championship review here. We're just going to package everything together tonight and keep it on one reel, and people will find the sections they want to look at. Um, but We start right at the 100-pound division, and I know you got some good input here on this particular tournament because you were very, again, closely watching. You have a number of female competitors from Bedford, and you're just a nut like me who loves wrestling. And so we'll start in the 100-pound division, right? So as the girls' divisions, they continue to grow. Right now, they have some smaller brackets, and a lot of them they'll start in the quarters, some will start in the semis, and we have, I think, two that start in the finals. And I want to preface it with this: these are our trailblazing athletes that are setting the stage for the next wave of young ladies that can come in and wrestle exclusively against girls in hopefully, some time to come, but dual meets and then in full bracket championship matches. And so I honor all of them for having the courage to get out here and do it because it's a tough sport, period. But they don't have their own designated girls' practice rooms. They have to get in and mash it up with bigger, stronger boys. And so, with that, we have quite a bit of iron to talk about here in the girls' championship round. So, let's start really like we do with the boys, right? First bracket, 100 pounds. We have in here, Demons was the 1 seed. She was sitting at the top of the bracket with a bye in the quarters, and then you had Chandler from Salem was your 2 seed, also sat in the semis with a bye. And so Watson out of Wyndham made her way to face Demons. Not so good there. 20-2. Demons wins, pushes her to the finals. Dana English in her opening round picks up a quick fall over McKenna Comtos, excuse me, out of Pelham. She is a freshman, and Comtois is again, she's under the tutelage of Liz Donovan, and as a freshman, she's coming in brand new. Keep your eye on her. She's gonna make some noise because she's got that attitude where she wants to win. And so, when you add that with a little bit of experience and some time, good things are happening. And that's literally what Dana English has been doing right there. She's been putting in the work over the last couple of years on the youth level, and she's popped up on the high school radar. She reaches the semis with a win over Comtois, and she takes on a very tough Chandler out of Salem. And Chandler is new to the game. She's not an experienced wrestler. She's not been around 5 years. I think she actually has maybe a little less experience than English. But man, she gets out there and she has that Blue Devil killer instinct. And she gets an 11-0 lead before taking out English by a pin in the second period of the semifinals. And that sets up Demons and Chandler in the finals. And it is Chandler coming out on top here. The 2 seed takes out the 1 seed by a pin in the second period. No points scored. Must have just been a quick turn in the second. And Chandler is your first state champion out of Salem on the day. And 100 pounds, these girls, they fly around the mat. They are just like our 106s and the boys, right? Solid, like high or fast twitch muscle fiber, and they just go, 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 go. Squirrels in a sock, like Coach Austin would say. What were your thoughts on this bracket? And, we had some discussions before about it.
I mean, it went pretty much the way I thought it was going to be honest with you. I was saying at the pre-show, I think Chandler's been looking better all season, and she came to wrestle this weekend, so she looked real tough. I don't think she had any trouble all day. Demons, and again, no knock against her. She also looked pretty tough. It's just Chandler has come so far this season, and to see her just kind of roll through. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, but I did. She's going to be great going forward. Is she a freshman or I don't even know.
She's a freshman.
Yeah, she's going to be fantastic going forward.
I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and again, just for clarification for everybody that's watching, the top two in the girls division head to New England's, correct?
Only the top two, yes.
Okay, so in the 100-pound division, we have Kaylee Chandler out of Salem and Joy Demons out of John Stark. And so I'm very happy that they're heading to New England's. It's unfortunate for them, the division that they're in, heading down there, because in that particular division, Hannah Perro out of Noble.
They're going to run into some buzzsaws.
They're going to run into some very tough buzzsaws. And that's just where the inexperience will show. It's okay. It's like the next natural iteration of their development is like, hey, great job. Now go be humbled. And that's the great thing about this sport. So again, congratulations to Ms. Chandler and Ms. Demons, and good luck on your trip down to New England. And we'll take a trip to the 107-pound division, where again, a whole bunch of tough ones. And I think in this one we said this one is like the multiverse. We could wrestle this one a whole bunch of times and get a bunch of different results, right? So we had our 1 seed was Olivia Mae Schultz out of Goffstown. Bajpay, she was your 2 seed. They both got buys into the semis, right? The quarterfinals were stacked. Crean out of John Stark, Paris out of Salem, Greer out of Keene, Haddad out of Merrimack, Stewart out of Plymouth. I mean, it's just nuts. What transpired over the next couple of rounds was pretty entertaining, right? So Paris beats Crean in the quarters, puts her against Schultz in the semis, and guess what? Paris upsets number 1 seed Schultz from Goffstown, picks up a second period pin. Salem has their second female wrestler into the finals in 2 brackets. On the other side of the bracket, Greer takes it out on Haddad that she's the 3 seed instead of the 2 or 1. She jumps out to a 5-0 lead and puts a pin on Haddad, moves her to the semifinals. Bajpay gets a win over Plymouth. Stewart's out there in the top of her bracket, and Bajpay puts it on her with a quick pin. Greer and Bajpay in the semifinals, and Greer getting it done. And again, I think this is one of those things, right? The inexperience. Greer's pretty technical. She's been around a while. Improvement. Bajpay's still new. She's going to make some of those errors, and Greer's going to take advantage of those. And so Greer moves on, faces the 4-seed Paris in the finals, and gets a bit of taste of her own medicine. It is Ella Parrish from Salem, your second New Hampshire champion for Salem in the 107-pound weight class this time. She takes out Greer with an 18-5 lead before the pin in the 3rd period. Schultz bounces back, takes on Brenna Crean down in the consolation match, and takes her out for 3rd place. And unfortunately, as we mentioned, only the top 2 head down to New England, and that's Paris and Greer. Coach Kenna, another squirrel or another sock with a bunch of squirrels in it, and who ate their way out?
So, I mean, we said this was going to be one to watch, and it was. Even the true second match between Greer and Schultz was a good match to watch, if anybody saw it. Back and forth, and I think every match looked pretty good. Paris she looked too strong for the other girls to handle. She was headlocking all day, and literally no one could stop her. So it was a great bracket to watch, as predicted. But I think they're going to run into some trouble in New England. It's the same thing as with the hundreds, where they're just going to run into some serious talent with like Bertini and some of the other mass girls.
Yeah.
But man, what a bracket to watch.
Yeah, if Greer wins her first match at New England, she takes on Patton out of Pilgrim.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
that's a tough competitor.
Yeah. So, but this is what it's about, getting the experience and the opportunity. Anybody that's going to win New England's this weekend, whether in the boys or girls division, at one point or another, they were the pigtail in, and they met up with a 1 or 2 seed and got smashed. It's a rite of passage.
Yeah, the one who really impressed me was Crean. I mean, she only got 4th, but she looked, of all the people, she gave Paris the toughest match. She ripped up a couple of our kids. She looked really strong and really fast, just like her brother. So I was impressed, for sure.
Well, I got to tell you, I think Crean is going to be your dark horse coming through girls wrestling the next couple of years.
I can see it. Yep. Absolutely.
She's strong. She's very agile. She knows her body very well. Her and a girl that we'll talk about here shortly, Reeves out of Goffstown. They very similar styles in that sense, and good stuff. All right, so let's jump to 114. So that's another good one, right? Another tough one. And speaking of Reeves, she was your 1 seed. She buys into the semifinals. May out of Goffstown and Mendez out of Salem. They had to go battle at it in the quarters for the right to face Pietranero out of Plymouth, and that ends up being May. And this is Sarah May out of Goffstown. She was your 3 seed. She takes on Pietranero. I'm getting that one right this time, Charlie. And it
Well,
is
Todd's not here.
Pietranero, who she gets the pin over May in the semifinals. And then Reeves on the top. Semifinals for her, 34-second pin, heads to the finals. Doesn't want to do much more. She takes Pietranero out, does Adri Reeves in a minute and 22 via pin. So Casey's your runner up. Adri is your champion at 114 pounds. And not surprising here, Sarah May, she jumps down underneath. She picks up a third. Jenhedi Mendez out of Salem is fourth. Again, another young Salem Blue Devil wrestler. But Reeves and Pietranero, two good representatives to send down to New England and get some experience down there and start to make some noise as they continue to learn the sport of wrestling. And buzzsaws galore every weight class you go into down in New England. But they're going to have some fun for sure.
I mean, it went pretty much exactly as everyone predicted with 1, 2, 3. But I think Adri looked real tough, and she's going to do well at New England's. That's one bracket I know pretty well across the state because I thought my daughter was going to wrestle it, but she didn't feel like cutting weight. So it's one of the tougher brackets in New England, but I think Adria's got a good shot. She can definitely beat some of those girls out there, and I would not be shocked to see her place in New England's. She's that good.
She's the 6th seed in the bracket. She's on the bottom side, so she's got her work cut out for her. But I agree with you. I think I think she's going to represent New Hampshire very well down there. Win, lose, or draw. Anybody that she wrestles, they're going to know that they're in a match with her. She's tough, just like her brother was. Dare I say, tougher. All right. So that's the 114. Let's pop to 120. This one, I'll probably end up covering most of this one because you probably don't know anything about this one. But this one was one of your smaller brackets, right? We start out at the semis, and for the 120-pound weight class, there's some girl, Grace Kenna. She was the 1 seed. She's out of Bedford. You may know her.
I think we cross paths every once in a while.
Once or twice, right? And then you have a very tough on the other side of the semifinal bracket there, Avery Berardinelli out of Merrimack. So those two young ladies, they do exactly what they got to do. Kenna, she smashes Medina from Manchester West. She gets a 35-second pin there after building up a 7-0 lead. And then you had Berardinelli. She gets a medical forfeit from Caden Stadnick out of Salem. And so Berardinelli gets into the finals here on a nice, easy path. But sometimes those easy paths, they don't pay off. You want to get those matches in and get your systems going. And Grace, she walked into the finals very confident. I know she was battling a little bit of illness prior to the MOC. But it looks like they had a pretty good match. The score is 4-2 in the third period, a minute and 1 in. Grace decides she's had enough and she's ready to be crowned the 120-pound champion for the Girls State Championships. Avery, and again, don't let the easy path fool you with this young lady. If they put 3 or 4 girls in front of her, there's a good shot she's going to be right where she ended up. Very tough wrestler, both young ladies, and excellent representatives heading down into the 120-pound class in Rhode Island. What do you think?
I think Avery proved that she definitely deserves to go to New England in her true second match where she dominated. She looked really tough. So just because she ran into Grace in the finals, that's how it works sometimes. But it was a close match until Grace got on top, basically.
Yeah, and Berardinelli 20-2 in the true second match, right? Tech fall, second.
Yeah, dominant. So she definitely deserves to go where she's going.
Agreed. 1,000% agreed. And 120, when you look at the New England bracket, there's some hammers in there too. Frost out of Noble. I mean, that Frost name in Maine, they've been a force up there for a while now. And this Frost is no different. So good luck to the ladies in the 120-pound division from New Hampshire. It's going to be good to watch. All right. So now, 126. What do we got? All right. So now this one we know, right? So Liz Donovan, she was your one seed. Ellis Pietranero was your two seed. You had Boys Bay out of Bedford was the three seed. She opens up the day with a quick pin over Kiev from Manchester Memorial. Sets up the semifinal match with Pietranero. You and Coach Austin, you had talked about this one prior to the weekend on the pre-show, and it's Isabel. She gets the win in the semifinals. She picks up a first period pin over Ellis, sets up the match between her and Liz Donovan, and that one lasted all of about 26 seconds before Liz said, "I'm ready to go to New England." And again, wrestle this one 1,000 times, and it's going to end up with her on top. It's just there's levels to the game. She's like David Pento in the 175 boys division. It was a battle for second place at that bracket, and no different here. Donovan closes out what is probably the most illustrious female career here in New Hampshire thus far. Total trailblazer, set a lot of firsts along the way. Been an amazing representative, whether she's at the New Englands or on the national scene, and great congratulations to her. But tell me about Boyve. She put it on Pietranero pretty quickly there in the semis.
I'm telling you, I mean, if Izzy wasn't in Liz's weight class, she'd probably be on top anywhere else you put her. She's one of those girls that's going to be on the top of the podium going forward for sure. She's only a sophomore, along with Grace and Audrey, who's another girl that we have. So this is a solid class of Bedford girls that are just all fantastic, and Izzy is no exception. She is getting better. She's I think, second year wrestler. That's it. And she is talented beyond her years. Let's put it that way.
Well, I also want to give a shout out to one Mackenzie McLeod. So she was their fourth place finisher, and she's out at Oyster River. And if you remember Oyster River, it was the home of the very talented Noah Strout a few years ago. And Oyster River continues to be coached by Mrs. Kim Strout, and she's just been an absolute angel that's been inserted into the small school environment that is Oyster River, and she makes sure she provides an opportunity for young ladies like Mackenzie McLeod. And so it's just great to see Oyster River uniform on the mat. And to Mrs. Stroud, I say keep up the great work. It's always a pleasure to see her on the mats and her continuing to do whatever she can to continue to build wrestling here. So I just want to put that out there real quick. All right, let's talk 132. This was another good one. So Kira Lynch out of Salem, she's your one seed. Egan out of Pelham was your two seed. Again, couple you had Shaw out of Bedford was four, Stewart was five from Muscoma Valley. So Lynch, just rightfully so, the one seed. She just had a heck of a day. She starts it off with a first period pin in the quarters, keeps it going with a first period pin over Shaw in the semis, moves into the championship, and apparently he's just trying to beat records. She takes 13 seconds to take out Claire Thurlow from Exeter. And then we have the true second place bout between Thurlow and Shaw, and it's Shaw of Bedford, Audrey Shaw. She wins the true second place match and ends up being a representative for the New Englands, for New Hampshire at the New Englands, her and Kira Lynch. Lynch was the third Salem State champ on the day, which is pretty amazing in itself. Audrey Shaw again from Bedford, second place. Coach, what a day, huh? Gets bounced out, bounces right back in.
This was probably, if it wasn't for Kira Lynch doing what she should have done, this would have been similar to the heavyweight bracket we had for the boys, where what is happening right now? Because the girls you would not have expected to win all of a sudden get pins. Claire Thurlow was losing both matches and comes back to pin to get to the finals. Same with Audrey, where she's down in a couple matches and somehow comes up on top. Audrey almost, gets a takedown on Kira Lynch, which I think the whole gym was like, "What is happening right now? This is unbelievable." But Kira is she's too good with that headlock. I don't think many of these girls are going to be able to stop her at this level. But all these girls, what a day! And Audrey probably had an amazing tournament that she's never had because she's beaten girls that she in Cologne and the Pelham girl. I would have thought both those girls would beat her, and she pins both. So
Yep.
what a day!
Yeah, I will say this to Miss Lynch. You better keep developing technique because the headlocks are working on the girls that are new. And like we mentioned Sawyer Goodwin, right? We coached him down on the youth level. Just could not get him to stop throwing headlocks. And then he had to make a choice in high school. If he wanted to win, he had to develop. He had to have something else. And I don't remember last time I seen him hit a headlock. So she's gonna have to keep again. She's young in the sport, right? She's got that Lynch last name, so you think, experienced. No, she's very young in the sport and very committed. And so between Lynch, Shaw, Thurlow, Cologne, 132 bracket was in good shape. So again, congratulations to Lynch and Shaw for heading down to Rhode Island next weekend. Represent us well, please. All right, 138 pounds. Whoa, we got a little one seed here that maybe didn't have the greatest day, right? High. She opens the day up and she loses to Davis out of Newport, and Davis moves on. So Davis, unranked, had only match in the quarterfinals. Random draw. So High had to get the, she had to take it into. So Carly, one seed, but also had to get that first match, and the rest got buys, right? Unfortunately for High, she gets beat and beat pretty quickly. Davis comes out, gets a takedown and a pin in 53 seconds. That moves Davis out to, and again, Davis is out of Newport. I don't know what you know about Newport, but it's a small program and it's even smaller girl numbers. And so Miss Taylor Davis, she moves on to the semifinals. She takes on number 4 seed, Jalen Valentin out of Londonderry. 36-second pin there. Davis heads to the finals. Now, on the bottom side of the bracket, you had the 3 and the 2 seed. Opening match on the bottom side. You have Burby out of Sauhegan and Hershey out of Plymouth. It is Hershey with a 7-0 lead. First period pin. Sets up a great match between Davis and Hershey in the finals. And one thing I can tell you about Taylor Davis is this lady has faced a ton of adversity, injuries, some personal issues that have gone on. It's been a rough road for her. And to see her continue to stay with the sport, she's not in that 100-pound division where it's, a bunch of young boys that still haven't hit puberty. She's at 138 pounds, where there's some pretty rugged and tough boys that she's had to compete with. And it's really made her into a very tough young lady. And what she did on that day in completing a championship run at 138 pounds, Taylor Davis builds up a 6-0 lead, overtaking Hershey, and she ends it in the second period, 38 seconds in. She gets the pin, and to see the rush of emotion over this young lady and her crowd, just hits the heart. So congratulations, Miss Davis. And to take it, she is a representative as well. Ava Burby out of Sauhegan was third, and Valentin from Londonderry finished fourth, but the day belonged to Davis. And, Newport's a small program. They haven't had a ton of highlights in the last couple of years, we say since, Yoshi was there. Blake's trying to do his best to continue to spot some highlights. But on the girls section, she is the trailblazer for Newport. And it's just great to see her end up on the top of the podium.
Great day for Taylor Davis too. It's funny with girls because you see more tears in the winners than you do the losers. And this was one of those ones where there was just a lot of tears because, like you said, it was probably one of the best days they've ever had. Hershey looked tough, but it was just Davis's day, man. She did a great job.
Yeah, she wrestled technically sound too. Her technique it's coming along nicely. You could tell she's putting the work in, and for it to pay off on a girls state championship for Newport, which Correct me if I'm wrong, Newport, but I believe that's your first female state championship in school history. So, congratulations, Ms. Davis. Job well done. And again, to taking Hershey out of Plymouth, it's a long ride down to Rhode Island, but it's worth it. All right, so that's 138. Let's hop 145. This one's a good one. So, bunch of tough ones here, right? So random draw, three seed Zanoni. She's out in the quarterfinals, has to win her way into the semis. Takes on Beidou of Manchester West. 11-0 lead. Comes out with a pin in the second period. That moves Zanoni against a very tough Isabel Brandt out of Souhegan. Brandt has been on a tear the last couple of years, building up her stock in the female division. In the other match, you had Mackenzie Lacoste from Spalding. She took on Errol Busby out of Lebanon and puts it on Busby. Beats Busby 22-5 with a tech fall in the semis. Sets up a match in the finals. Who's that going to be against? Well, Isabel Brandt. She takes out Zanoni 12-5 in the semis. So Brandt and Lacrosse go at it. It's the 1 and the 2 seed. Both are extremely tough wrestlers. And it ends up being Mackenzie Lacoste is your 145-pound champion. She takes out Brandt with a 7-4 decision. And two great wrestlers heading down to New England in our 145-pound weight class. If Zanoni had popped her head in there, guess what? There would have been, same thing, same statement made, right? This bracket had some really tough wrestlers in here. And, Arrow, fourth place. She dealt with so many injuries last year. She's dealt with them again this year. For her to make it in, that's a moral victory. But our top two representatives here, we're in good hands.
I mean, this bracket went exactly as predicted, but it didn't make it any less exciting. It was fun to watch. And again, like you said, if Zanoni had, made it over Brandt, we still would have been okay. But, Brandt, I think, placed last year. Lacoste is going to probably place this year. I think we're going to have two placers in New England. I would not be shocked.
I will say this, Mackenzie, again, congratulations. But I do want to, Isabel is again, a trailblazer. She's one of those girls that had to come through wrestling only boys. There were no other girls for her to wrestle in. She's in the 145-pound weight class where there's some studs, some brick poopy houses, as they say. And she's had a battle against them. And she applied for the scholarship, the NHWA scholarship, and so able to read her essay and all that. But the thing that stood out to me, Charlie, was I had a moment to speak with her coach, and the way that he spoke about her and how she embodied the Peruccio spirit. And he happened to coach Pooch, as he called him, in college, and he stated how she just really embodied everything that he stood for. And when he started coaching her, he wasn't completely sold on girls wrestling the same way as boys. But as she leaves that program, she leaves a head coach who now is firmly behind and believes in the competitive spirit of female wrestlers and what they can accomplish and how committed that they can be. And so, coming from a great coach and Coach Tromby, with those words for Isabel, she's moving on this year and looking to wrestle in college. And I think, again, both of them are heading to New England, but both will be a tremendous asset in the college realm as well as they move on. So just a really good bracket there. I just want to give her that shout out real quick. All right, what do we got here? So 52. Listen, this one's another one of those ones. We talk about Liz Donovan and the things that she's done. Sadie Nadeau from Spalding, she's very much in that boat. We got four wrestlers in this bracket, and Schaefer was the 2 seed on the other side from Londonderry. And here's the thing. Nadeau, she's just been around the scene for too long. She's too technical, and she's just too strong. And that's the case with some of these trailblazers that, again, came through the ranks getting beat up by bigger boys and getting beat up and getting beat up. And now that the playing field has been level, Sadie wasted no time. She had a 27-second pin in the semifinals, and then in the finals, she takes out Schaefer with a minute and a half first period pin after building up a 6-1 lead, and just kind of cruises her way into the 152-pound championship. You know, Schaefer, she's your true second place finisher here. She will join Sadie down in New England, and Sadie's one of those girls, you know, keeping my fingers crossed that she climbs the podium down there in the New Englands.
I think you said it well, Ben. I'm hoping for Sadie. Again, it was a smaller bracket, but that doesn't mean that Sadie isn't top tier. She absolutely is, and you know, if you're a Schaefer, got to find that out. But I hope she does well in New England too. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, well, Sadie got the 2 seed in the 52 New England bracket, so she's on the bottom, and Schaefer's up on the top. She gets an opening round win. She's going to run right into the number 1 seed. So they both got their work cut out for them, but this is what we do. We got to go and wrestle it out.
That's just the way they seed girls in New England. It's kind of weird where they just pick a state and say that's the 1 seed, and then they take the next state. Whoever your top placer is the 2 seed, then the next state, whoever the top seed is the 3 seed. So they just make it so that none of the first placers wrestle each other in the first round.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, there's like a lot of things. They're still trying to figure out the mechanics, and as the numbers grow, that stuff comes into more focus. So, speaking of focus, 165 pounds, one Jillian Boncourt out of Alvern. She was your 2 seed, and you know, she's another one of those ones. She's had to deal with some injuries. She's had to deal with, you know, wrestling the bigger, stronger boys. And boy, did it pay off. Because Miss Jillian Boncourt is your 165-pound champion in the New Hampshire Girls State Tournament. And she did so with a 14-0 lead to fall in the semifinals over Aubrey Mevagachi, Muskoma. And then moves on into the finals. She takes on the number 1 seed, Ayla Saturn out of BG. Saturn picked up a quick pin in the semifinals over Bennett out of Wyndham. And so Saturn and Boncourt going at it. And Saturn's up 10-1 in the second period, 44 seconds in. And apparently that was enough for Jillian. She just said no more and pins her.
Did you see this match? This was a
I
great
did not. I have a note to watch it. Did you see it?
Yes, I did. It's fantastic. I mean, Ayla looked like she was handling the match well. She was being tough, just wrestling the way she had before. And then it seemed like out of like nowhere, just from bottom, turns to a pin, and like the whole place explodes. It was awesome. You know, kind of like Big J getting his pin.
Yep.
In the finals, it was that kind of energy, and it was just a great match. I mean, you know, Ayla looked like technically she was just going to walk away with it, and Jillian just came back, got her pin, and it was a great match to watch. So if you missed it, you really did miss out.
I'm wondering back. I think I actually ref this match. Now that I think about it, I'm looking through the box score, and if you look at it, like you said, Ayla looks pretty technically sound. Takedown, lets her up. Takedown to near fall. That's all in the first period. So it's 10-1 at the end of the first period. And for Jillian to, you know, looks to her corner, it's her choice. Take top. And that was all she needed. And the weird thing is in period 2, she catches a stall warning on top. Well, we say it as officials all the time, man. You get that stall warning up in the air and those kids go to work. And this was no different. Jillian heard that stall call and said, all right, I'm done wrestling, and puts the pin on Ayla. And so Jillian and Ayla, they will both head down and represent New Hampshire, the 165-pound division in Providence, Rhode Island this weekend. Also the same weekend in area of the D3 national championships, if you're looking for something to do on a break time. But yeah, just a good division there. You know, Bennett bounces back. She takes third. She's from Wyndham. She beats Aubrey, who was from Muskoma with a 4th place. But yeah, good bracket there. And like you said, a wonderful finish there in the gym to close it out. And we'll close out 2 more weight classes as we go. 185 is next, one of our small ones. It was a 1-match bracket, unfortunately. And Madison Beauregard, exactly what we thought it was going to be. She beats Maya Coombs out of Milford. She puts up 10 and pins her in minute into the third period. Her sights were set on New England's, and I'm going to hop over and just take a quick peek and see what that New England bracket looks like. And where do they got her? So they got her down at the 2 seed. She buys into the quarters, which is good. She's looking to climb all the way to the top of that podium at the New Englands. And so a good warm-up match here in the Girls State Championships for one Madison Beauregard, and congratulations to her. And the good news here, I guess, for Maya is you're going to the New Englands too, my friend. And so we got 2 of them representing. They're going to go down and do some battle. But we talked in the pre-show. This was Madison's to claim.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine a match where Maddie didn't come out on top. So pretty much went the way we would have expected, but we're represented well regardless.
Exactly. Yep. Our final one is our 235-pound girls bracket, and in this one there was 3 semifinals. Was a matchup between Peyton LeClaire out of Kingston. She took on Jamie Burt out of Timberlane. Excuse me. And I had mentioned Burt is a brand new wrestler, first Timberlane female wrestler in history to my knowledge. I could be off, but I'm going to give her the title for now. But it was LeClaire out of Kingswood. She built up a 7-0 lead over Jamie, and then she gets that pin in the first period. And so LeClaire takes on McKinley Damaris out of Winnisquam, and she returns the favor. Damaris puts on a 15-second pin over LeClaire. And so McKinley Damaris is your 235-pound New Hampshire female state champion. And McKinley Damaris out of Winnisquam is your champ. And Peyton LeClaire out of Kingswood is your runner-up. Both will be heading down to the New England Championship match. And again, I just want to shout out Jamie Burt. She's in a D1 program in one of the toughest rooms in the state, and you finished your season. That's a win. And so, anything here, Charlie?
I think this is one of those blink and you miss it weight classes, and unfortunately, I was probably watching another match at the time, so I did miss it. But looks like 15-second pin. I would assume that's probably a headlock to a straight pin would be my guess.
Would make sense if I was a betting man.
Yep.
All right, so now we go over to the team scores, right? And so this one probably stings a little bit too for you, Charlie, because we got the Salem Blue Devils. They were disappointed in the boys bracket, and they made up for it in the girls bracket, and they take down their first ever girls state championship with 78 points, 3 champions and 2 fourths, so 5 placers. Bedford finishes a respectable second place with 63 points, 1 champ and 2 runner-ups. Spalding was in third place, 46 and a half, 2 champs. Plymouth in fourth, and Pelham in fifth. Pelham had a champ, obviously, with Liz. Goffstown 6, Keene 7, Souhegan 8, Newport 9, John Stark 10. Look at the number of teams that are in here for the girls division. That's first and foremost. 27 teams were represented, and Salem had a great day. They put out 3 champs. It's a tough room over there, and Coach Eddie ain't treating them any different than he's going to treat the boys. He's gonna expect the best out of them. So, I guess obviously, congratulations to Bedford on the second place. But I really want to get your thoughts on, you have a daughter who's uber committed to wrestling. You're a wrestling nut. Your whole family's wrestling nuts. Gabe's a wrestling nut. Oh, they're all nuts now, and you've done a great job of enrolling them in it. And so you've been watching over the last, 5-6 years, the girls, the growth of it, the explosion of it in some aspects. So, what was your experience on the tournament this year versus, in years past? And, what did we do good, and what do we get to work on?
Personally, I like it side by side. I know everyone wants to have girls have their own tournament, but to me, it's awesome to see these girls side by side with the other, the boys doing their thing. I like the energy that it brings to the tournament. And honestly, like that with the numbers we've got, I think the girls aren't at a point where they need their own day yet. Give it a couple of years and I think they will. But it's really nice to have them kind of in what I would call the big show where they get to share the stage because all these girls are tough and they've been working hard. They're all good wrestlers. Um, it's just the first time some of them have even seen a level playing field where they're not up against some boy that's just beating them because they're stronger. I mean, especially once you get above 113, there's not much you can do as a girl. And that just goes to show how tough people like Liz are, where she's competing against boys and winning. So watching them in this tournament, to me, is just as exciting. And I am really looking forward to see the numbers keep growing. And I think if we have more girls tournaments throughout the year, you're only going to see this tournament get bigger and bigger. It's just they need the opportunity to compete. And once you have that, then you're going to start getting rooms fill up. And I mean, it's really hard for girls to just wrestle boys in a practice room. And I'm sure there's plenty of teams out there where if you look down, you see one or two girls and they're in, somewhere in the midweights. That is a tough girl who's willing to go through that. So to see the growth that we've seen, I think this tournament is a great thing. And I'm only looking forward to it getting bigger because, I think we had how many more girls this year than last year? It was like a 20% growth,
I
something
think
like
we
that.
had 20% growth. Mark Williams did a great job. I got a spreadsheet. It's not handy at the moment, but I think there was 44, 40 to 50 more matches this year. Like, there's no denying the growth. And I think, when you talk about splitting it up, we're not ready yet. I think keeping them in the big show, as you said, like they deserve that kind of a crowd to watch them. And I think if you separate it right now, there's just not enough to create that crowd.
Right.
Um, during the season tournaments, I like that idea of separating them out because I do think it impacts the environment at times. And but championship way right now, I think we got it right this year. I'm gonna wax poetic on what I think about how the NHIA handled some things, this stuff, in a post show. That's a message for another video. But on that note, Coach Kenna, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chop up the or the meet of champions with me, both male and female. Just what an amazing day. Some great individual accomplishments, some amazing team accomplishments. And, shout out to Pinkerton. They did a great job in hosting the tournament. They got a great facility, plenty of parking, plenty of space. And, there's always things we can do to improve. But like I said, we'll talk about that another day. Um, Thank you for your time. You're starting up MPAL again in the spring. Is that correct?
We're starting up next Tuesday, so exciting.
All right. So if anybody's in the area and not in the area but willing to take the ride, if you go to the Manchester Police Athletic League here in Manchester, look it up. You can find the address. You'll find Coach Charlie here on the mat, and banging around. And so it's a great place to go and get some good knowledge and some tough wrestling. So if you're looking for some extra work, it's a great place to stop by. And Coach, I appreciate your time. So thank you so much.
Again, thanks for having me, Ben.
You got it. And New Hampshire, we'll see you on the mats in Rhode Island, baby.